Do it live.
I drank coffee instead of shots before the show.
Just do it live. We are live right now. We're live. Folks, if you're joining us right now, we're a little bit late. So, yeah. Join.
You can kick them off.
The conversation live. Boom, boom, boom. And let's post. All right. So we are going to... Wait, I'm on the wrong thing. How did this happen?
He's watching the wrong video.
I don't know what happened here.
It's buffering currently, so we're...
There we go. We're good. All right, so the Questions Championship.
Not in school yet.
That was in 1988.
I was 2 years old.
And then went to the Monsters of Rock shortly thereafter, right around the same time. I think it was 1990, maybe 88, 89, 90, somewhere in there. It was like 110 degrees on like the infield. And then multiple Acme Zip games where Acme played Kent there.
Yeah.
And then Hoban and St. V games there too.
Sorry.
That's the whole point, right? All right, so I suppose we should do a show. Moonman, we ready? It's been a while since we've been in studio here, folks.
We lost.
It's hottest and fast. I'm your host, Hank Forrester, coming to you live from Stakeout Studios overlooking the rolling plains of Hardesty Park. In tonight's episode, we take a deep dive into the drug epidemic that we're facing here in today's society. But before we do that, we're once again joined by the dulcet tones of Dina Marie.
How you doing, Hank?
Just living the dream.
Just living the dream.
Tonight's episode is brought to us once again by LaBelle's Barber Parlor. LaBelle is located inside what is now known as the East End, which is Goodyear's historical buildings. Their state-of-the-art facility boasts big screen TVs, a coffee bar, and compressed air at every station. It's like being in a hunting lodge. It is behind, but it is up.
Okay. All right, so... All right, so point is, folks, we're going to struggle through these. Maybe we should just go ahead and if anybody's online anywhere in the house, just have them shut it down. All right, so just go ahead.
It will be recorded, though.
Tell the kids it's going to be recorded. It will show up later, and it will be on the audio. So right now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started with tonight's topic. And tonight's topic is not a fun one, right? It's about drug addiction. It's about different types of addiction, and it's a serious topic. And you know, we don't exactly relish sharing in these when we do these kind of topics. But it was viewer recommended, so I decided to go ahead and challenge it. And he came in, and he would have to brief us in regards to, what is going on in the culture that is relevant to what you should be looking for in the workplace. Okay, and it was like a 6 to 10 hour course, roughly.
This was just a course, or was this your job?
This was just a course through work, but you'd have to pay the guy to come in, and he was a consultant, and he would share it with you. And so the point is that throughout the course of the day, we're in a environment where lots of different workers are coming in and out from different cultures, different environments, and so you needed to be aware of how to spot the signals of drug use. So, while taking the course, he basically said to me, this was 4 or 5 years ago. He said, the Akron area in this area of the country is about to be hit by the worst drug epidemic crisis that we are ever going to experience in our lives. And I never quite understood what he was talking about at the time because, I'm not a drug guy. I drink more than I should, okay? But when it comes to drugs and that sort of thing, I'm very naive. So it was interesting to experience that and to listen to him say that. And he said, what I want you to do is I want you to start watching the obituaries. He goes, you're going to start seeing in the obituaries, you're going to start seeing folks between the ages of 25 and 65, and they'll be passing away. And in the first part of their paragraph up top, it will say died due to unforeseen circumstances or died unexpectedly and all this sort of thing. So I took it to heart of what he was saying, and I started watching it. And he was right. Like all of a sudden you start seeing all these folks that were passing away, and you're like, it doesn't make sense. It's way too early. So he went into this whole discussion about how, and again, I'm not a marijuana guy, and I'm not for or against the legalization of marijuana. That's a whole different show, okay? But when it comes to the thought process, it was, this is how it happens. He said, what will happen is a guy will start buying weed or whatever, and they'll they'll say, okay, well, I'll give it to you a little cheaper if you just sell some for me on the side, okay? And then they start selling it a little bit, and then the next thing you know, they're saying, well, I don't get high off marijuana anymore. You know, the whole gateway drug concept, and I know people hate that term and hate talking about that, but then the point is that they wanted a better high, so they would go to something else. And what he mentioned was at that time, drug dealers were starting to use techniques where they were reducing the amount of heroin that they were giving people, and they were cutting in other stuff. So they were adding additives to the heroin to make it more powerful, and to cheapen what was required in terms of what they had to spend in terms of getting their good quality stuff.
Making more in the end.
Yeah. So the goal was to make more money. Okay. Well, what it did is it introduced all these powerful substances into the actual cut heroin that was not being accounted for by the person that was buying it. And it took heroin and it made it like 5 to 10 to 20 times more powerful. And again, we've got an expert coming up here in a little bit. Expert, yeah, he's like, yeah,
that's you. You're an expert compared to us.
The point is, I don't know a lot about this stuff, but I've had to do a lot of research about it. Okay, so here we go with it. These are just some generic facts in terms of Summit County, Medina, Mahoning, and Stark, just the surrounding areas. Okay. Anywhere between 20 to 50 people a day go to local area hospitals, and this is just the county. This is just one county.
This is just people going to the hospital.
This is just one county, okay? 20 to 50 people a day go to hospitals, and they are in a process of having an overdose, okay? My dad used to be a valet at City Hospital, and he said it was very common for folks to literally just drop people off at the front entrance of the ER and drive away because they're afraid. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to get arrested, right? So someone would be ODing, they would drop them off and leave. Okay, he said this was a regular occurrence. So the drugs we're talking about in question here are crack, meth, heroin, fentanyl. Is that how you say it?
Fentanyl.
Carfentanil. And what's Rizzy powder? I heard about Rizzy powder, which was...
I have never heard of that.
Whatever that is, okay? The problem is right now the drugs are all being packaged and cut on the same tables.
So it's all mixing.
So it's all mixing together. So in other words, you go to buy like marijuana and like there could be some fentanyl in it that you're uneven aware of because it was made on the same table as the heroin. And then on top of that, there's the whole discussion regarding Narcan, and Narcan is, from my understanding, it's an aerosol can, right, that has a counter drug that's like an antidote when you're having an overdose, and it just gets squirted or inserted up into the knob.
They're seeing the same people over and over and over.
Yep.
So I think that was kind of some of the argument of why are we continuing to use this.
Right, and then the other whole thing was, there's other drugs that do counteract it as well. One is, I'm going to say this wrong, Suboxone, and the other is methadone, which methadone gets you high, but Suboxone does not.
Yes,
is
my
that
understanding
correct?
These are not the same as they're going to reverse the effects. These are
hundreds of overdose deaths annually per county in our viewing audience.
Yeah.
Per county. So as you
it's literally affecting everywhere.
Yeah, so as you go through that and you understand, okay, well this if that's hundreds per county, then it's obviously thousands, which Ohio ranks second in the nation. Ohio ranks second in the nation in terms of overdose and drug issues, okay? And people have asked me why in the past, and part of the reason for that is when you say Ohio is the heart of it all, it literally is the heart of it all. And when you look from a standpoint of where all the roads intersect, you've got 90, you've got 80, you've got all these coming together, and then you've got 71, 77 leading down to 95. So literally, I know for a fact that some of the biggest drug busts in the history of America have been at the Lodi truck stop.
Yes.
Because these are these intersections of all these areas. So it's geographically the heart of it all. Now, another thing that we want to talk about, and this will come up tonight, is the outpatient waiting periods have changed over the course of the years. It used to be where it was a 45-day waiting period, and now it's been reduced because of the crisis due to like 5 days.
They still don't have room for everybody.
They still don't have room.
That's why there's so many organizations out there trying to connect and counsel and therapy through.
Many people have become aware that there are other drugs that potentially are in their cabinets are an issue. So incineration numbers have gone way up in the last couple of years in regards to Summit. When I checked all these counties around us, a lot of folks are more aware that the drugs that are in their cabinets are potential issues.
Yeah.
So they've been incinerating them and throwing them away. So that's good.
And I know several cities. I'm actually from Copley. There's certain days every other month now. You just bring them to the police department. And they're taking care of them.
Well, and a lot of it comes down to how does pain and depression play a role in this whole thing, and that leads us into the mental health aspect as well, which we'll be touching on in a little bit as well. I know when I've talked to local safety forces, police and fire, they're totally overwhelmed right now with everything that's going on, and they have been for years. And a lot of it is because they keep seeing the same repeat offenders over and over again. So the question is, how do we fix that? I don't. We're here to discuss those topics, right? When it comes to where does the money lead us? We're gonna hear from someone here who has experience with someone from the military as well. This is a hard question. That's a really hard question when you say, okay, well, where's the money when it comes to big pharmacy? I mean, now we're talking about the intersecting of multiple worlds here that are dealing with this and contributing to this issue. Okay, how do doctors play a role in regards to what they prescribe as far as pain medications and all that sort of thing as well. So these are all parts of the discussion tonight. Look at Roseanne. I know Roseanne just got canceled, and some people really like the show, some people hated it, but we're not. I would say we're not Republican-ish for the most part.
That's a different show, Scott. That's a different show.
But we enjoyed Roseanne and the reboot. We liked it.
Yeah.
And as a result, we were disappointed with the way everything went down, the way it was canceled, of course. But one of the last shows before they got canceled was it was about Roseanne hiding. She was addicted to pain medications, and she was hiding them in a bottle and hiding the bottles around the house from Dan. Her husband was Dan, right, in the show.
Yeah.
So it was interesting them bringing that up.
Well, and I think you had discussed about the gateway drug, and that it was started by
shame. They put me in the cone of shame in the hospital, and I ended up. They ended up prescribing me the stuff, and I don't think I ever. I think I used like 1 or 2 pills. I'm not going to say that, but the point.
And that's where the money comes in too. There's that, who makes money when somebody has a surgery and needs pain medicine, and you take that, and you've got those people. So, yeah. Right.
Yeah. So the point is, he went and he chastised the whole panel, and he goes, "I want you to tell everything that you just said to the 22 families of the funerals that I just officiated this year." And I went, whoa, okay. And at that point, he really set the table. And that's Reynard. Reynard actually was scheduled to be on tonight, and he couldn't be here. He's got a conflict, but he did send one of his associates as well. So he's going to be here to take his place, and we're going to bring him on in a little bit. But the point is, as soon as I heard that, I'm thinking, okay, that's where the disconnect exists, because right now you've got community and you've got all these groups that are doing their thing, but whether or not they know what the other's doing or whether or not they are working in tandem is the question. Mm-hmm. And then you got another group that's saying, oh, by the way, that's not working out. Okay. Yeah. So right now, without further ado, and again, folks, we're having all kinds of fun. I'm like, he's all quiet now. This is the first time he's been quiet since he's been here. All right, so Don, now you're with the Packard Institute. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So right now, I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody the first time they're on our show, and that is, what is your Akron story?
My Akron story is born and raised in Akron. Grew up in Joy Park, till I was about 4th grade, moved to Firestone Park, attended Garfield High School, got kicked out my senior year, go figure, and graduated from Central Howard. I love Akron, birthplace of recovery, means even more to me. And I have Rubber City tattooed on my forearm. So.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
That's awesome.
So I am Akron.
His house is literally right around the corner, like just up this way, Dr. Bob's.
Oh yeah, yes.
So, all right. So, why are you here today? Tell us about your organization and tell us what you guys are doing out there in the community.
Sure. So, like you guys mentioned, it's a crisis. It's an opiate epidemic, and I don't know how accurate those statistics are, because the morgue has cold body storage that there's bodies not even counted for yet, because that's how horrible this is right now. The Packard Institute, since '92, 9 Deuce, as Renard would say, has been providing mental health, addiction, counseling services. We have 2 sober houses. It's an outside of the box kind of thought, different pathways for recovery. And whatever that pathway looks like for someone is definitely the road that we're going to take with them and for them.
All right. So what as individuals, as a community, what can we be doing? What should we be doing to help? I mean, where do we even begin? Where are we, and where do we go? Where do we begin?
Well, as a community, there's a stigma, and that stigma is, drug addicts are criminals, they're thieves, they're liars, they're this, that, and the other. I think that as a community, perhaps people that aren't familiar with addiction, are not in recovery, one thing they need to do is think a little more open-minded about the recovering addicts or the people in addiction. One thing that is a disconnect for addicts is connection to people that understand, empathize, and are able to help them in any way they can. So, for example, we have a team of recovery coaches at the Packard Institute. A recovery coach is a little different than a counselor. A counselor might say, here's a treatment plan for you to follow. We want you to go to this many AA meetings, so on and so forth. A recovery coach is going to meet that person. It's a peer-to-peer individual, someone that's in recovery, been there, done that. They're going to meet that person wherever they're at in that recovery and kind of follow that path and help them and guide them down that path. Not telling them what to do, but coaching them on, anything positive that they're doing. For example, you might have a heroin addict that's recovering from heroin, doesn't do heroin anymore, but is smoking weed. We got to concentrate on the fact they're not doing heroin anymore. And that's something that some organizations might not agree with, might not agree with different pathways. They might say, it's Christian-based or higher power-based programs. People might not believe in God. I personally, from my own recovery, I'm a firm believer in God, and God is the catalyst. My relationship with God is my catalyst to where I'm at today. But if I meet somebody that doesn't have the same belief as me, that's okay. We're going to meet them where they're at. So SUMA in Barberton, we have started a program that the Packard Institute is going to deploy recovery coaches to SUMA when someone comes in for an overdose, if somebody calls the emergency room in a crisis of their addiction. And that recovery coach is going to meet with that individual. SUMA is going to offer them a 3-day Suboxone treatment. They're going to have to come back to the emergency room for that treatment. And during that time, the recovery coach is going to try to set them up with services, with detox, with a bed in treatment. Even if they need diapers for their kids, and that's something that's a crisis to them, we're going to try to help in any way we can. Think of the recovery coaches meeting those recoveries in SUMA as party planners, and we're going to plan the best party that they can ever have, and that's recovery. So we just started it this Saturday. It's gradually taking off here, and we hope to roll this out into the other SUMA facilities, and hopefully it catches on nationwide.
All right, so that's awesome, like she said, but I guess let's even back it up even further.
Sure.
How do we... I grew up in the Nancy Reagan era, Okay, I'm part of the just say no generation, right?
Sure.
How do we keep kids and folks from getting into this stuff in the first place? What's the prevention aspect of it?
Is there anything?
I mean, we can educate on prevention. We can educate on the effects of drugs. We can educate people on, why every single reason in the world not to use. But what you had pointed out is that it's not really, and I understand what you're saying, where marijuana is the gateway drug and can lead to other things, and
and that's just a
right.
programmed response, right?
And and that's just that's the stereotype.
That's what the OSHA guy was teaching.
And
right.
there's always going to be this. This is why. This is why. This is why. It doesn't
Right.
mean that all of those could be the answer, and a mix of it all.
But there's so many clients that I've met with at the Packard Institute that started off with an injury, and they had surgery, and now they're addicted to opiates.
Oh, sure.
And then the opiates got too expensive, so then they switched to heroin, and then
Or the doctors stop prescribing it because they get better, but they're already addicted.
Exactly. And then as you mentioned, the fentanyl. People are cutting. They're cutting the drugs with fentanyl, carfentanil, and it's killing people within seconds of using it. I lost a brother in August 2017 to a fentanyl overdose, and he didn't do heroin. He did crystal meth, and somebody cut that and killed him and his girlfriend.
That goes back to what I was saying about using the tables in generic fashion, right? I mean,
right.
Or just using fentanyl as a replacement with whatever.
Exactly.
When did fentanyl start? Why did it
Like
just cost-wise?
It's been about 6,
Was it cost-wise?
7 years roughly.
I have my own theory on why it started, and I think it started with
and you're okay. By the way, this is free government zone.
Yeah.
You do whatever you want.
Yeah. So I think it started with these heroin dealers cutting their crappy heroin with fentanyl to make it more potent.
Right.
Okay.
But then it's got into, again, meth and cocaine, and there's a lot of overdoses on, there's a lot of more overdoses of people actually using something they think is one thing, and it turns out to be another. Mm-hmm. So,
what do you got? You got a question?
No.
Well, you've had. Well, I don't want to get into all that.
What you got?
No, I don't want to. I don't know. This is such a touchy subject because it exposes nerves.
Sure.
You're dealing with people, is the question.
You help people by connecting them with people that can understand where they're at and meet them where they're at and move forward with their recovery. Not everyone that's never experienced addiction personally or within, near them are going to be able to understand, be able to see that. There's arguments, and I used to get in these arguments on social media all the time to where I had to back away from them because you're not going to be able to change everyone's mind and make people look at things the way you see it. Some people look at addiction as it's a simple choice. You can choose to stop whenever you want. From my experience, again, with my own personal experience with addiction, I lost 2 brothers to addiction. It's definitely not a choice. You might choose to pick up for the first time, but you really don't know what you're addicted to until you get addicted.
Until it's too late.
Right. So, I agree with the whole. It's choice to use for the first time, but you don't wake up and choose to be an addict. You don't say, you know what, I have a good job, but I think tomorrow I'm going to start this career in addiction. So it's something that there's a stigma on that, and if with people, the public looking at it like that, it's going to be hard to overcome this. So I guess it's empathy is what people need to understand, and people need to understand that it's bigger than just a choice.
And with the idea of, you were talking about somebody who was on just a pain reliever and hide it and all that. That's not a choice. If you get injured and you need a painkiller and you take that and then you get addicted, it was your choice to recover. It wasn't your choice to become an addict.
Exactly.
Well, and so the problem I see with this is that it's not winnable. And what I mean by that is it's kind of like the war on terrorism, okay? This is a never-ending battle. It's not like all of a sudden one day we say, okay, we won. Yay, we're done. Woo!
Right. Right.
There's no end in sight per se. So I think that's where the majority of the frustrations lie.
Right.
And what I've always been taught, or what I've been told, is that once you're an addict, you're always an addict. It can always come back at a minute's notice, any given time, any given period. where something happens in your life and it switches on those triggers, and bam, you're right back in the cycle again.
Absolutely.
So it's a constant process. Is that right?
Absolutely. And so with the recovery coaches that we're training in a CCAR model. CCAR stands for Connecticut Community of Addiction Recovery. And what CCAR, basically the whole philosophy is there's multiple pathways to recovery, and we're meeting people wherever they're at. And so with the recovery coach helping these recoveries, we're helping them, provide them with assistance and tools and just overall support on, what could possibly or potentially happen. Those triggers are real. And before this whole epidemic, 5-6 years ago, relapse was part of recovery. You relapse, you find out what went wrong, and then you fix it and you move forward. There's no relapse anymore because relapse is death these days. And so we need to nip it before and before the relapse. We need to make sure that we're reaching out to people and we're holding them tight, as Bernard would say, the warm jelly donut treatment, and wrap around them and make sure that they have the support they need. There's disconnect and there's gaps in support. We're in the city, a birthplace of recovery, and there are gaps in support. And with, again, this recovery coach program, with the SUMA program, with the help from United Way, with the help from the Catholic Charities, Oriana House, Community Drug Board, we're trying to close those gaps. We're trying to meet them in the emergency room when they're asking for help, meet them in the emergency room when they're just getting Narcaned back to life. And we're going to be up in their face saying, hey, my name's Don from the Packard Institute. Let's get you some help.
Well, and I wanted to point that out. I know it's hard to read, but the Oriana House, I put up a hotline number. That's, go ahead.
330-996-7730.
Now, Oriana House is very limited in their space, so we're just listing that as a potential hotline. There's a number of resources you can reach out to throughout this entire area.
And reaching out to that hotline, they will connect you.
They will connect you. So if folks want to get a hold of Packard, how do they do that directly?
You can call my cell phone, 330-431-6473. I would give Bernard's phone number out, but I don't have it memorized at the moment. But, I can definitely, I have enough resources, the Packard has enough resources that we can plug you into assistance. We can make sure that you're getting the help that you need, and we're going to do our due diligence to make sure that you get that help.
Okay. How many other organizations are like you guys around town?
Like the Packard Institute? None.
Okay.
But the same type of organization, several.
Okay.
And there's great organizations out there. Somebody might come to the Packard Institute that might not necessarily be a good fit. We're going to find an organization that's a fit for you, and vice versa. And again, if you believe in God and it's a spiritual side of things, that God is helping you with your recovery, there's a Celebrate Recovery meeting, almost every night in Northeast Ohio. There's one in Mogador at Cornerstone Church. I happen to know the person very well that facilitates that meeting. His name's Don Legg, and it's a great meeting. I make my wife make dinner every night at 6 o'clock, every Saturday at 6. Hi, honey. We're probably going to need about 75 pounds of meatloaf this week. But we start off with a meal, and then we do some worship, and then we talk about recovery. Again, there's other organizations out there, there's other meetings out there, and it's going to be whatever's comfortable for you and whatever's a good fit for you.
We played Cornerstone in softball. Where are you guys located?
There's one in Portage Lakes, and there's one in Mogador.
Okay. I think the one we played is by Portage Lakes. So
the Mogador one just started a softball team, and we actually had our first game this Sunday.
Okay.
We got blowed out pretty good, and I'm still sore. So, but yeah, it's a great church. I love that church. But again, if it's somebody that's has different beliefs and different outlooks on higher powers, then we're definitely, again, willing to meet you wherever you're at.
Okay. Well, let's hear for Don, everybody, but I want you to stay on there. Stay in your seat, though, but
okay.
Do your little thing. All right, so we're going to make a phone call, and I want you to be a part of it, okay? We're going to call Dr. Shannon Foster.
Okay.
Shannon happens to be my sister. Thank God I was born first, so I didn't have to live in that shadow, okay? Now, Shannon is she's a trauma surgeon, and she's in charge of a lot of stuff. And I know recently she was involved in some things at the national level. So we're going to give her a call, and I know she's part of this process on the national level. So hopefully she answers and I don't get her voicemail. It would be just like her to
send you right to voicemail.
Send me to voicemail. So here we go. We're going to do it live. Where'd it go?
You don't have your sister's number memorized?
Absolutely not. All right, here we go. I know they're watching.
Hello?
Hello, Dr. Shannon. This is Hank. You are live on the air.
Hello, Hank.
How are you?
I'm great.
That's fantastic. Dina, say hi.
Hello.
All right, so I've already let the cat out of the bag that you're a big deal and that you're my sister. So everybody knows that, okay? So right now,
Sorry about that.
easy. So she should insert comment here, like you didn't have to live with him for all his life. All right, so first of all, I'm going to ask you the same question, even though I already know the answer. I'm going to ask you the same question I ask all of our guests, okay? She's like, what?
Bruh.
What is your Akron story?
My Akron story.
Yes.
So I was born at Akron General when the nurses were on strike. I grew up in West Akron, a mile from where you live at this very moment. Went to St. Sebastian School. Spent some quality years at Archbishop Hoban High School. Did my college years at the University of Akron with a couple degrees, and then moved on to pursue medical education elsewhere. So I return to the area frequently as able.
Excellent. So now, the obviously you're aware of the with our topic tonight, and I apologize. I know Mom's been trying to watch the show, and it's been freezing. So we did have some technical issues, but we've sorted out most of those at this point. So you guys should be live, or just about a 10-second delay.
Epidemic. That has to mean that there's the statistical information to support that it is in essence affecting every segment of society. So it is not socioeconomically specific, it is not race specific, it is not geographically specific. It means that everyone is being affected. And so once that is the case, then we start to develop a statistical plan to understand where those segments of the population are being affected, what we can do as potential preventative measures, and what we can do as potential therapeutic measures. Don't get shot. And if there's no access to guns, then people can't use them. So how do you figure it out? Well, if there's no research or there's no data, then there's no solution. So we talk a lot about it, but nothing really happens. When it comes to issues of intoxicated or distracting driving, we're very clearly aware of what the problems are. So the preventative efforts are able to be pushed towards now it is illegal in many states to text while driving. It is illegal in many states to not be wearing your seatbelt. It is illegal in many states to not be wearing your motorcycle helmet. So we can take these public health issues and make them legislative and policy issues. So here's the problem with the opioid epidemic. Again, it is ubiquitous. There are drugs everywhere, and people are getting them both through legal prescribed. All of those different statewide databases actually have the capacity to communicate together and to keep track together. So that's a big deal. And we're also continuing to advocate and push that there's additional funding to identify the sources at inception. I think some of the comments that you guys were already talking about, how are these people first getting exposed? Are the vast majority of people who become addicts coming through the legal prescribed route, or are the vast majority of people who are becoming addicts coming through the illegal, getting it off the streets? And I'll be quite candid. Prescription, I can write out something, here's your prescription for, because the people that are going to become addicted to prescription pain medications or to pain therapy following one of these events are those that expect their pain to be relieved. It's an impossible thing, because the body is manifesting pain because of inflammation and because of the need to heal. So education is the best thing that you could do. The people that want to use drugs illegally, that are going to do it for fun and for recreational use, they're going to do it anyway. So the key is to try to keep giving them better alternatives to what's going to be a good time for them.
Okay. All right. Well, any last thoughts, sis?
On this serious issue, unfortunately, I know you talk about sports and.
All right, so
She basically said exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Meet them where they are and love them is really all we can do.
She was very well spoken. Are you guys, you're sure you're related? Right?
Sure.
I was just.
Those nurses
curious.
were on strike.
We could
Maybe they mixed something up.
That is true.
Didn't do the proper paperwork.
Wow. Then wow. We got to bring that up. Hey, Shirley's watching right now.
I'm sorry, Shirley.
Oh goodness. No, I wasn't the one on strike. I wasn't with the nurses. I didn't get misplaced. No,
She
it wasn't
did.
me. It could be. She could. Yeah.
Sorry, Shirley.
Horrible
All right.
turn of events.
So yeah. So
Anyways.
point being, and again, I wanted to bring her on because she like Don said, she knows her stuff, right?
She does.
So it's one of those. Yeah.
I'm in recovery. I've been in recovery since May 14th, 2006. May 13th, 2006, I was in Summit County Jail, and I was pulled out of the cell to be told my younger brother Josh had passed away. He passed away from the same drug that I used for well over a decade that he used for 6 months, and it killed him. So right then and there, I knew that I needed to change something, or I was going to be next. So the next day, a chaplain came in and prayed with me, and I devoted my life to a relationship with God. And since then, I've just been trying to better my life, and to give back, to make sure my brother didn't die in vain, and share his story and share my story.
As an alcoholic. So I've been in Al-Anon for 17 years. I go weekly to every other week, but there is so much support in this area for AA and families and that whole kind of both sides. So,
And that's, again, forgive me, that's a support organization that's specifically designed to support the families.
yes, because, I have been told for years that I am the biggest alcoholic that some of the counselors have seen. I don't drink very often, but when you are raised in that type of environment, when you are surrounded by that, you pick up their characteristics and stuff as well. So it's a support group. It's a, I have a sponsor that I can call if I feel, overwhelmed or going through things. So it's a great organization.
Yeah, I agree. And I also wanted to mention, too, that the Packard Institute, we also offer Tuesday nights at 6 o'clock, we offer a family support group, kind of like what you're describing. And that meeting, we just check in. We kind of go over, what's going on, how are you coping? And that's for people that might have lost a loved one or someone that's out there still struggling, and how do you love them but not enable them? And so we provide that kind of support. Another thing that we do is Wednesday nights we have a tribe meeting, is what we call it. The Packard Institute is considered a tribe of individuals just trying to recover. And that meeting starts off with yoga at the Red Cross on West Market. Starts at 6 o'clock, I believe. And right after yoga, they do a meeting, a check-in. It's not really necessarily a 12-step program. It's just checking in, and it's just people in recovery helping other people in recovery. So something anyone can definitely check out. I also wanted to mention NEPS. The Packard Institute, we also have a recovery coach support group. There's a Facebook page. It's the Recovery Coach Support Group of the Packard Institute, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a recovery coach from the Packard Institute. It could be from any organization. The first meeting is the 23rd, this Saturday at 1 o'clock at the Packard Institute, and we're just trying to help people. We're just trying to make sure that these coaches that we're empowering to help other people in recovery stay in recovery.
Okay. All right, folks, we're going to transition now. Let's hear it one more time for Don, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
All right, now at this time I'm going to introduce our next guest. She's gonna exit stage left.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's like, do I sit here still? And at this time I'm going to introduce our next guest. Our next guest is Deidra Lopez, and Deidra has a story that she'd like to share with us here tonight. First of all, if you noticed earlier on my timeline, I shared a clip on Louis James Loftus, and Louis was a military member, and we showed a clip on him from NBC from 2010, I believe.
Yes.
It was 2010. So right now we're going to introduce Deidra. So go ahead and start with your Akron story, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I was actually born and raised in Arizona, but I've lived in Akron for about 15 years now.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't know how to really frame this, so I'm just going to kind of let you go. Now, you've got a story you like to share with us, and it basically is the story of Lewis and your interaction along with him as well. Okay. Now, as far as what you've done previously to this, you've been on NBC and you've been with big networks. So this is kind of small potatoes for you. We're gonna be big. We're gonna be big.
No, this is big too.
We're gonna be big eventually. We will. It's just, you know. But the point is, though, I wanted to give you an opportunity, and it really lends itself into the discussion that we're having tonight. Kind of tell us the story, starting back, when you guys met and the military experience, and then where it
Solution. So that gave us a good time to kind of reconnect. He was on his second tour. His first tour, we were really good friends. I visited his grandma every 2 weeks, brought her food, said hello, made sure she was okay. So we were pretty tight-knit the entire first deployment. The second deployment is when we came pretty close romantically. He'd come home on R&R. I'd see him every time. We communicated a lot through letters, care packages I would send. So because a lot of it had to be letters, we learned a lot about each other. So by the time he got home, we just felt pretty close. So he came home when he got out of the Army in 2010, 11, right when the NBC thing started. He moved right in. I mean, we were best friends for years by then. So, everything was great. I knew he was going to come home with PTSD issues, depression. He wasn't going to be the same. I took classes at the VA. I read several books from the library. I kind of did a lot of research, so I knew how to better handle his issues, any issues, whether it was with nightmares or just the depression or the anger episodes, anything like that. I wanted to make sure that I was prepared for that. So he didn't think that I was just uneducated on it. And he came home and, his plan was to go straight to college, and he took some time off and he relaxed and, and he earned that time. So how does anyone say to someone like him, you need to get up and do something? He did 2 tours, 27 months in Afghanistan. So he earned the right to come home and relax, and that was that. But, that length of time, he was also getting medicated through the VA for injuries overseas and whatnot. So having been on a waiting list for so long for an appointment with a psychiatrist and to be reevaluated, once they debrief you, they kind of just send you on your way. And I feel like the VA doesn't cycle them through quick enough when they get, released. So that time that he's self-medicating, that's rolling over into other things, because that's only going to medicate him and compress his feelings for so long. And I feel like that is when the drinking started.
What's the time frame here? What year is this?
About 2011, 12.
11, 12?
Right after the first NBC clipping filming, things just kind of fell apart, and that's why they did the follow-up, is because...
Can you just real quick you had said he came home with depression and he came home with all of that. Can you just briefly give what he went through to cause all that? Just so people understand why he was on medication and why
Absolutely. He his ranking leaving the military was a sergeant. On a lot of, he volunteered on a lot of missions there to be on the front line. So he saw a lot of things a lot of people wouldn't. He volunteered to be in the front so other people, and had asked him about a recent friend who was shot and killed. And so he has been right next to 4th of July. Never. I mean, it was just, it was a disaster for him to be a civilian again. So all he knew was that life for a while. So adapting was just very difficult for him and everyone else in his close circle around, which was me. And then we had our first kid in 2012. So introducing a child into all of this we planned our first child. That's what got the follow-up is, he showed pictures of me and him and that he had another life back home. And so once they kind of closed that off, people wanted to know what happened to him. How did he get out of the service, and how is he doing at home, and did he marry that girl? Did he, do certain things like that? So we got calls from the Today Show, different services at NBC. We got a lot of cool packages. They were at Akron General when I had Mason, so there's a big camera crew. And it was a really cool experience to be able to also help other families that go through this and probably don't see the other side of it, of these troops coming home and what they actually go through and how hard it is for them to adapt from military life to civilian life. It's not as easy as, oh, I can relax now. They don't relax. And they need help as soon as they come home from that green ramp, on base. They need to be checked, starting with the session. And it's just sad that they have to go home and kind of relax, debrief, and then go home, and then they got to wait for an appointment. And then if that gets moved, they got to wait again. And there's nothing in between that time that gets that. So the world was really curious about him. So NBC did a follow-up, and they were excited to hear that we were having a baby, and so they wanted to come to the hospital, so they did that. And then the Akron Beacon did a story on him. The False Press did a story on him, and so we were pretty well known for a while. We took the kids took Mason that Halloween to go pick pumpkins, and we had several people coming up to us like, "Oh my God, we love you. We saw you on TV," and thanked him for his service. So he did a lot of great things for a lot of people, and we will always respect him for that. I think this is more of a matter of he didn't have the resources to help what he needed, and a lot of the system failed, and they fail a lot of veterans like this too. So they did a follow-up story, and then they kind of closed it off with where we left off, and that we were expecting our second. So it was they're great people. We met a lot of people through that. They flew us to NBC for the second part of it. It was Mason's first plane ride, so it was really, really neat to kind of get the background of that. And they're very nice people, and a lot of these letters that came in were just genuine people wanting to know what happened to him and how he was doing being a civilian now. So
that ends that chapter, and then what leads to the next chapter? So
your second is born.
Nolan comes along, right?
Nolan comes along.
Okay.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, somewhere alcohol had to switch to other stuff, right?
Yeah.
So how'd that go down?
I found out through somebody that she had overheard him telling someone else that he was doing heroin. And for me, my nephew is 14 now, and his father is a heroin addict. So Lewis, having been my best friend for years, grew up with my nephew Vince not having a dad due to heroin addiction. And he would always just say, oh my gosh, how sad it is for this guy to have a son and never see him. So it's like we grew up around that. We saw it firsthand. He would take my nephew to go work out at the Nat. So he was there in place of his dad, so he saw it firsthand. Lewis was raised by both parents are drug addicts and alcoholics. So, this was a big background that he and I were both educated. Most of my family in Arizona are alcoholics or drug addicts. So we both understood the severity of it to control it. But I think him coming home with those issues and not having anything to help in between then, that's the only thing he could turn to. So I think, once after Nolan came, I just noticed things missing, money, time's missing. He's working 20 hours a day, but not paying bills. So I just kind of caught on to certain things that aren't just what alcoholics do. And not that there's a big difference in the addiction, but, with heroin addicts, I feel like it's it's the clockwork, because you get sick and you can't go so long without having it. And your brain tells you need it once you start to come down from it. So the money was going quicker. He was getting jobs, my face to actually admit and say it that he was an addict, and he told me how much he was doing, and we went straight from there to ADM. He left 2 days after that, so we went through a series of trying to get him to go to detox, stay in rehab. He relapsed 2 or 3 times just with the couple years that I tried to help him. After a while with the children, it's a lot on me. I couldn't balance being a good mother and watching him and helping him. He's detoxed on my couch before, and it's the saddest thing to watch. And having growing up with him and having children with him, and we've created these human beings that look up to him. I wanted to do, and he would do something that was just not, in my opinion as a mother, not okay, and I wouldn't allow the kids to go with him. So anytime the kids, I felt like they weren't in good hands at that time, I would let him know why. And if we came to a medium agreement, then we would work something out. If not, they just didn't go, you know. So, but there's never a point in time where he was away from them for so long. But I've always been there for them to make sure that they're where they're supposed to be. And I never judged him for what he went through. I have to look out for them first. So it was never against him personally. It was just about the kids.
So then there's a gap, and so you guys split up. Okay, he goes on his way, you go on yours, and so now what's the end of the story here?
Can you tell us a little bit last year?
What's the last part?
So the last part of this story is we realized that we need a mediator of some sort. He seemed to think that when I don't let the kids go over there for the safety reasons that I think are safety issues, he doesn't agree with them. So now we go to court and we go to this huge custody battle. We both spend at least $4 or $5 on attorneys. You know, and the animosity is growing. The rage is in status does not take away of his addictive personality. That is just who he is. So he cannot just drink being a heroin addict. Just because it's not his drug of choice does not mean it's good for him to do it. And they didn't really believe that. So the magistrate did not trust my judgment, and she allowed shared parenting. He did supervised visits for a while, and then that progressed in his own time unsupervised overnights at home. And that went okay for however long it did, and then now we're up until we sign papers. It's official. He gets them Wednesdays and then every other weekend, and I had them the rest of the time. We split childcare costs, and we finally came to a happy medium where we thought we could get along and co-parent together.
So at this point, you would say probably would not be the lowest of depression and kind of be a higher point in
absolutely.
his life.
And he was released from probation, I think in the same week or 2 week that we signed the court papers. So there was a lot of good things looking up for him. He was getting off probation after 6 years, out of Valor Court. He graduated Valor Court. So there was several things that were looking up for him. I saw him 2 days before he passed away. He was in my garage. We were talking about the upcoming kids schedule, who is picking who up when. And he went home happy to my knowledge. The next morning, he didn't show up to get our youngest. And that was unusual for me. So I kind of let it go. And I figured he just was doing something else. And then the next morning at 4 a.m. is when it happened. So it's like, should I have called? Should I did that? You know, we were kind of friends, kind of not. We were just getting back in and around. So I had no indication that something like that was wrong. You know, he left my house actually telling me, I love my kids. I'm never going to go back to that stuff. I want you to know that. I have worked so hard to get to where I am. And we've spent so much money to get to where we are. I'm not jeopardizing that. And I love my children. And I said, I know you do. And I totally believe you. And a day and a half later, they find him in his room. And it's disheartening. It's sudden. I think a lot of it, you know, I'm not taking anything away from him doing it. My opinion is not biased because I have kids with him. It's kind of from the outside looking in. I've always, you know, whether you think it's a disease or a choice, the fact of the matter is these people are human. So no matter which way you want to group them, they're still dealing with the same thing. I think they're, like you were saying earlier, there's a lot of money and funds towards Alcoholics Anonymous, and the courts kind of pushed him out into AA and forced it upon him. And these groups are specific to AA. And in some of them, I notice if you tell them that you're an addict and not an alcoholic, they don't really want to help you. Yeah. They don't feel like you belong there because that is an Alcohol Anonymous group. So it's like the courts will push you. He had to go to 5 AA meetings a week. He's not an alcoholic. Could he have been if he picked up drinking? Sure. But that's not his drug of choice right now. His drug of choice is heroin. So he should be in a group specifically devoted to, you know, people who have this issue. And there are NA groups, but it's not as popular or as big as AA at all. So even having to be forced to go to the 5 of those meetings a week, you're forcing him to go to a group with other people that are being forced to be there. So it's like, it's not a lot of support. Nobody there is majority of people there are there because they're on probation, because they have to be there, you know. So there wasn't a lot of other resources that probably could have helped him. But he got the consequences to his actions ultimately. And that it's a sad reality for a lot of people. It's a sad reality for my kids. It's a sad reality for me. Other military wives that go through, or families that go through this, they take the risk of those people coming back 100% different. And you either mesh well with them after they come home or you don't. And it's not your fault personally. And a lot of women, girlfriends or wives, struggle with depression on their end because they feel like they can't make that person happy anymore. Or how do I help you? Or how do I keep you from wanting to go have a drink to feel better? You know, but that's just an area we're not equipped to handle right now, but I think there should be more resources for that.
And then, and then the very end, right? We looked this up because we're trying to do our research to get ready. I don't even know how to say this. This will sound weird. He had the largest overdose in the history of the county. Yeah. So, in terms of parts per million in his bloodstream, right? Mm-hmm. So,
can you elaborate?
No, not elaborate. But my thought is that's a intentional. Let's just get this over with.
Right.
That wasn't like I'm shooting. I'm on my, like you said, it's on the clock. It's on the clock. It wasn't like, hey, I'm shooting up.
Right.
And it just doesn't make sense based on what you just told us. Mm-hmm. He finally got resolution, and it sounded like you guys were moving in a positive direction.
Right.
And it's like, hey.
Right.
So I can't even speculate on that, right? And no one can. But it just seemed just way weird, and I guess all this stuff is just weird. Just
I agree.
And as what she said off before we went on, she doesn't. You had said you don't really think that was his intention at all. That he thought he was getting something else, and got something very differently.
A lot of it, and a lot of it is like you said earlier. It's just about making money. So people will go as far as knowing that someone could die or close to dying, just to make that batch that they have last longer, to sell it more and make more money. So this is just a matter of somebody being as selfish as willing. And some people like him had a lethal dose of it, so it was just pure fentanyl. So it wasn't even cut with anything. So you have people out here doing things that are just blatantly killing people, and it's sad. It is a huge sad reality, and I think that they're just awareness. I mean, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But you can keep bringing it to water. I mean, it just takes that one time for them to drink, and they might keep drinking, So a lot of people get fed up with the epidemic and how many addicts are here. But I'll tell you, ADM is full, and they do have waiting times to get into IVH. And it's sad that someone can walk in there for detox and be told, we can't help you, and that person that finally got brought to drink that water wants to drink it, and now they're being told, we don't have room for you, we can't help you. And then that's another sad reality, is it takes sometimes certain people to get up to that point. Everybody's rock bottom is different. Not everybody's rock bottom is overdosing. They could get a letter from their mom and just know, I got to change, or they could overdose and know they have to change. But regardless, when somebody finds a rock bottom and needs that help, it should be available. Yeah. People are so against it until it's their family, until it's their daughter, until it's their son, know.
And Kate had said earlier when we were talking about this, getting ready, that, what did you say, honey? Your words were, people don't look at it as a thing. They look at it as it's like those people.
Right.
As opposed to when it actually happens to a decorated military service veteran.
Absolutely.
Right? And we dealt with this when Sage was on our show about a month and a half ago with the Second Chance Village. Those folks, a lot of those folks are recovering, and they don't have any place to live, and they're homeless, and then they end up going there and they can't even get help because they don't have an address technically. So unfortunately, I'm seeing themes. And all these little quilts are starting to weave together right now. And it actually leads us into our topic for next week, which is foster care and adoption. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is, and you're seeing it right now with the immigration situation, along with all these folks that are getting busted for drugs and whatnot, their kids get taken away from them, and they're immediately put into some sort of a system, and they need care. They need somebody to take care of them. So it puts a huge strain onto that system as well. So it's like all these social systems are all kind of interweaving on our little show here. And even the beds
in the hospitals are full because babies are being born addicted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, it's unfortunate, and the whole goal of tonight's show was more of an awareness than solutions oriented. Because we don't have the solutions. Because if we did, we'd be making $1 bajillion peddling them and fixing things. But this was designed to just to share our story. So, And Deidra, I know that was not easy for you to share. So thank you for being on. And
Yeah, absolutely.
we appreciate you sharing your thoughts. And I believe you had messaged me yesterday or the day before, and your words were that if you sharing your story can even help to save one person, then it is worth telling the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people, like you said, kind of group those addicts as those people. So they're kind of shunned. They have the walk of shame every time they're somewhere. But I think it's important for people to know that they still have feelings. They still have emotions. If I could go back, I would have probably put more work into it. But, to me, I wasn't as educated and didn't have enough awareness as I do now. So to me, it was problematic for me after a certain time. And I wasn't really thinking about him and what he was going through and how much he probably wanted to stop. But you're so dependent on something, So it definitely opened my eyes. And I've helped several people since then. And I'm just going to continue to do that. I balance my children pretty well, and I don't, they're not around anything they shouldn't be, but they know to help people when they need help, and they know to look for different signs of people that need help. So I just hope that other people are just aware that some people get tired of it and frustrated about the epidemic, but it's not going to stop if we don't help them. That just keeps growing.
Right.
So.
Dina, you got anything?
Nothing. Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
All right, once again, folks, we've had an interesting conversation with you here tonight. Hopefully you've gained some better insight into this epidemic that we're facing. And most importantly, just know that there's hope, and there are people out there that care about you. Seek those people out. Family, friends, don't not reach out. Next week, we take on a more in-depth look at fostering and adoption in and around the 330. This is a Debbie Downer show.
It was.
But it's necessary.
Just put it on seek those. The people who should be helping also need to be seeking out those who need help. I'm not going over there.
Come on, Kate.
I'm not going over there.
There's an empty seat.
She's fine.
Take a
She's fine.
microphone?
Hey, folks, until then, I don't know where I'm going, but there ain't no sense in being late. Everybody around town, say goodnight, Shirley.
Good night, Shirley.
This podcast is a copyright of Moon Garden Media.
Production by
Steve Bader.
Steve Bader.
Thanks, Moon Man.
Oh, just a lot of peanut butter.